I know, these two are not exactly direct competitors, but they do have quite a lot in common. They're both larger two-row SUVs, they're both available with hybrid powertrains, and they're available with a lot of the same features. Plus, as we all know, Mazda is trying to move up in the luxury ladder. So how close does it get to a luxury car like the Lincoln Nautilus? Let's go for a drive and find out. Driving the Mazda first, I'll be honest, this particular car is a top spec trim, so that means it has the higher output engine. The 3.3 liter turbocharged inline-6 produces 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. A more fair comparison would have been the standard output version of this engine, which produces 280 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque. But I just have to make do with what's available to me. However, it's a good thing that this Mazda CX-70 is more powerful because it is also heavier than the Lincoln Nautilus. And that weight difference is not small, it is big. Over 200 kilograms, that's about 450 pounds or more. But this extra weight doesn't seem to hamper the driving dynamics of the Mazda CX-70 because it drives much better than the Lincoln Nautilus. You get far more feedback through your fingertips from the steering wheel, and the whole car just feels much more planted through corners. Plus, the CX-70 has a rear-biased all-wheel drive system, so that means that more of the time, more power is sent to the back wheels rather than the front wheels. In the Lincoln Nautilus, it's the other way around. But for all that driving enjoyment, this Mazda CX-70 doesn't feel quite as refined as the Lincoln Nautilus, for two reasons. One is the 8-speed automatic transmission, and the other is the mild hybrid system. So this 8-speed transmission is brand new from Mazda, as well as the engine, as well as the chassis that the CX-70 sits on, but they haven't really tuned the transmission to be as smooth as its competitors. So in other luxury brands like Mercedes-Benz or BMW, when you're just driving around town, the shifts between gears are seamless. You do not feel them. In this CX-70, unfortunately, you do feel them. Now, I'm not saying that they are rough by any means, but you do notice them. Weirdly, I have noticed that if you drive this car a little bit more aggressively, then the shifts actually do become a little bit smoother. But if you do that, then your fuel economy is going to go out the proverbial window. Speaking of fuel economy, the 2025 CX-70 is rated for 10.3 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. The Lincoln Nautilus is rated for 11.2 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 8.1 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. During my week with both SUVs, I averaged better fuel economy in the Mazda than I did in the Lincoln. I think this difference was mainly down to the Mazda's mild hybrid system. So this mild hybrid system does help with fuel economy, but just like the transmission, I think it needs a little bit more fine-tuning and refinement. So in other luxury vehicles that have a mild hybrid system, like the Mercedes-Benz E450 that I recently reviewed, you do not feel the engine starting up or shutting down in a car like that. In this CX-70, you can feel it. Now again, I'm not saying that this is rough by any means, but you do feel the car slowing down just a teeny tiny bit. Whereas in other luxury cars, again, you don't feel it at all. That's the difference between established luxury brands and Mazda. Mazda is getting there, but they just need a little bit more refinement. Now driving the Lincoln Nautilus, it is powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, which produces 250 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. And that's why in the Mazda I said that it's not exactly the most fair comparison between the two because that Mazda has a much more powerful engine. However, as I also said earlier, this Nautilus is much lighter than the CX-70, so whenever you put your foot down, it is pretty quick in a straight line. Should you want more power, the Nautilus is available with a hybrid powertrain that produces 310 horsepower. The Mazda CX-70 is also available with a hybrid powertrain that develops right around the same power, but that one is a plug-in hybrid, not a traditional hybrid system like in the Lincoln Nautilus. But getting back to this 2-liter engine, it is paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission, and the shifts between gears is seamless, as it should be in a luxury vehicle. Unfortunately, you have no way to control the gear shifts because there are no paddle shifters and you don't have some sort of selector on the center console. All you can do is leave it in D or L and change between the different drive modes. In the CX-70, you do get paddle shifters to control the transmission. One key area where you'll notice a big difference between this Lincoln and the Mazda as soon as you start driving them is how they behave through corners. This Lincoln does not feel as sharp as the Mazda. The steering is light and very vague feeling. It's as though you're controlling a video game steering wheel and not the expensive kind, the really cheap kind. There's a lot of body roll through corners and the brake pedal feels spongy. It has a lot of travel and sometimes you will trip the ABS. So driving wise, this Lincoln Nautilus is not on the same level as the Mazda CX-70. But when it comes to comfort, it does a lot better. While the Lincoln is not as much fun to drive, things swing in the other direction when it comes to the ride quality. Bumps are much better absorbed by the softer and standard adaptive suspension of the Lincoln. Though over certain road undulations, the ride can feel a tad floaty. In the Mazda, the ride is not overly rough, but it is firmer than that of the Nautilus. Certain potholes and big road cracks can make the ride a bit jarry in the CX-70. It's also the Lincoln that has a quieter cabin. There's less intrusion from the engine under normal driving conditions, and there's less tire noise. In the Mazda CX-70, it's not too loud, but driving these SUVs back to back, it is noticeable that the cabin of the CX-70 allows a bit more engine and tire noise. Now looking at the interiors of these two cars and in the Lincoln, wow, that's the first thing that came to my mind as soon as I sat in it for the very first time. The screen that spans the dashboard is actually made up of 2 screens, with the driver's side displaying the vehicle speed, the fuel gauge, the driver assist, and so on, along with a navigation map. On the passenger side, you can choose from a few different widgets such as a trip computer, tire pressures, weather, radio, and so on. The interesting thing is that this screen is not as distracting as I thought it would be while you're driving. You just glance at it, and because it is so far away from your eyes don't need to refocus quite as often as they would on a smaller screen that's within reach. The only minor issue that I can see is that depending on how high up you have the steering wheel or whether you drive like this or like this, if you drive like this, then your hand will be blocking the speedometer, but otherwise it's not too bad. On the center portion of the dashboard is the main touchscreen, and that one I do find a little bit more distracting to use while driving because not only does it incorporate the entire infotainment system, but also the climate controls and the seat controls for heated or ventilated seats. And also, if you want to change the direction of the air blowing through the air vents, they are done electronically through the infotainment touchscreen. So if you have cold air blowing right into your face and you want to change it while you're driving, you have to use the touchscreen. That is just overly complicated. You do get a few physical buttons right underneath it for the drive modes or the hazards or to turn off the auto start stop, and you get a huge volume knob for the radio. Plus, this being a Lincoln, you do have the piano key style gear selector. In terms of space in this car, plenty of it for my tall height. I have plenty of legroom and plenty of headroom. But one thing that I did notice is that I am sitting a little bit higher up in this Nautilus than I am in the CX-70, even though this seat and also the seat in the CX-70 are at their lowest point. In the front seats of the Mazda CX-70, it is just as spacious as that of the Nautilus. There's plenty of space for my tall height, and it too has a commanding driving position, albeit I didn't find myself sitting quite as high as I did in the Nautilus. The design of the Mazda is much more straightforward. It has simple to use and understand climate and heated or ventilated seat controls. In this signature trim, it has a strip of suede across the dashboard, and the Nappa leather on the seats is very soft to the touch. Behind the front seats, these two SUVs have a few trade-offs. In this CX-70, you're getting a little bit less legroom in the second row, but you do get more cargo space. In the Lincoln, it's the other way around. Now, this Mazda CX-70 has the exact same specifications when it comes to legroom and headroom as the Mazda CX-90, because essentially it is just a CX-90 without the third row. So for my tall 6'4" height, I have just enough legroom behind my tall driving position. My knees are touching the back of the front seats, but they don't feel squished in any way. Also, I have just enough headroom. My hair is not brushing up against the headliner. These second row seats do slide forwards and backwards, and they're split 60-40, and they of course also recline as well. In the Lincoln Nautilus, as I said, you are getting a little bit more leg space, so I have about 1 or 2 inches more legroom than I do in the CX-70 behind my tall driving position. Headroom is about the same between the two cars. The back seats in the Lincoln also slide forwards and backwards, and they recline as well. One more thing to note, the doors of the Lincoln don't open quite as wide as those of the CX-70. Behind all rows of seats, the 2024 Lincoln Nautilus has 997 liters of space, whereas the 2025 Mazda CX-70 has 1,122 liters of cargo space. With the second row seats folded, both of which can be folded from the trunk, the Nautilus has 1,947 liters, while the CX-70 has 2,132 liters. Under the floor of the Lincoln, you'll find a spare wheel along with a couple of small storage compartments to the side. In the Mazda, it too comes with a spare wheel and a small compartment for small items just above it. Though these SUVs occupy different segments of the auto market, they are available with almost all of the same features. They both have leather upholstery, but in the Lincoln it's regular leather, whereas in the Mazda it's softer Nappa leather. Both have heated and ventilated front seats with heated rear seats and heated steering wheels. However, like all other Mazdas, the steering wheel heating is only at the 9 and 3 position because for some reason Mazda thinks that everyone holds the steering wheel only at those positions while turning. Where the Lincoln has a leg up is the addition of massaging front seats, which feel pretty good. It's also available with the perfect position 24-way seats, which I find to be too finicky. The regular seats are just fine. Both have 3-zone automatic climate controls, panoramic sunroofs, power hands-free liftgates, surround view cameras, and wireless phone charging pads. Unique features between both include a head-up display in the Mazda, while the Lincoln is available with Blue Cruise. This is Lincoln's hands-free semi-autonomous driving system that works on most highways across Canada and the United States. Both SUVs allow the use of wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto with their infotainment systems. In the Mazda, it's primarily controlled with the rotary knob on the center console, but when switching to CarPlay or Android Auto, the screen allows the use of touch for easier navigation. In the Lincoln, the centrally mounted touchscreen is within easy reach, but the infotainment system can feel a bit convoluted. Some items control the touchscreen while others control the larger display on the dashboard. The infotainment system has some apps built into it such as a fireplace, Amazon Alexa, Prime Video, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to this channel. In the end, these two have a very different approach to luxury. The Mazda doesn't have the refinement or the supple ride of the Lincoln, whereas the Nautilus doesn't have the thrilling driving experience or the simple to use controls of the CX-70. But where these two really differ is with their pricing. The Mazda CX-70 ends in pricing, where the Lincoln Nautilus begins in pricing. So yes, Mazda is moving up the luxury ladder, but they still have a ways to go. And as for the Lincoln, it does feel like a luxurious SUV, but it is getting overly complicated. In the meantime, if you would like to know more about either of these two SUVs, I have a more detailed written review of them over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up there. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck or most likely another SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and I see you in the next one.